Cheyenne, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I appreciate you being here. I'm excited to have you because we've known each other obviously for a while and went to college together. I've seen kind of your evolution, all the stuff that you've done, and honestly, it's always been for me really inspiring watching what you've been up to, what you're doing lately, and I'm very excited to kind of dig into it and honestly go like in depth on your story because we've always had kind of like a passing friendship and I know bits and
hmm
pieces of it, but I'm excited to kind of hear your full story. And like I said, I'm inspired by kind of what you always are doing in the outdoors, what you're always doing entrepreneurially, and that's kind of always been our intersection of
hmm
where entrepreneurship meets the outdoors. So I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Okay, my first question is you meet someone new and you have 45 seconds to introduce yourself. How do you describe yourself to them?
I would say I'm honestly a Renaissance woman. I love doing a little bit of everything, and I think that's what makes me unique, and that's what I love about life. I just love learning about new things, learning about new topics, and I'm also a business owner. So if I were to meet someone, go into what I do with my business, which I'm sure we'll get into later in the podcast. But I love the outdoors, I own a business, and I love learning about new things.
You're also kind of a serial entrepreneur a little bit here as well, is what
hmm
I've seen too.
Yeah, I really am a serial entrepreneur. I've only worked for someone else for about a year of my life. Other than that, I've just been working for myself. And that looks a lot of different ways, especially in the beginning. But I love the freedom that comes with entrepreneurship, and I'm really passionate about it.
Also, for a side note, you are the person who designed the GoGuide logo. So if anyone likes
Yeah.
the GoGuide logo, that
I
was
did
her.
design the GoGuide logo.
um, cool. Well, you also guide or did guide?
Yeah, so I
Tell me a
guide
little bit about that.
part-time, and I honestly still guide because I am just so passionate about being outside, and there's nothing better than getting paid to like show people something you're passionate about. Um, but even guiding is a bit of an entrepreneurial journey because I don't work for one specific company. I kind of hop back and forth as a contracted guide. So that also gives me lots of freedom in the guiding world.
Nice. And you mainly guide climbing, right?
Yeah, climbing and backpacking.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
So let's kind of start there. Give me the story on where this kind of all came to be. Like what has been your outdoor journey?
My outdoor journey. I would say it starts when I was really young. I fell in love with the outdoors. My grandma lived in Durango, Colorado, so I grew up going down there and she lived on a river and I just fell in love with the mountains and rivers and animals and I always wanted to pursue a life outside, and I didn't know what that looked like ever since I was young. And so it started with going on hikes when I was in elementary school, like the hills by my house, which turned into learning how to rock climb in high school. And when I got into college and I met a bunch of people who are into that same stuff as well, I just kind of dove headfirst into the world of the outdoors. And it was exciting. I think one thing that's cool about the outdoors is there's always something new to learn, whether it's a technical skill or a trail you've never been to before. There's just endless possibilities to push yourself in uncomfortable environments, which I really love.
Very cool. So is climbing still kind of like your main thing, or I you do a lot of slacklining and like highlining now too. So tell me
Yeah.
about that.
So climbing is kind of the first sport that I got really into. And I just was obsessed with everything climbing, how to do trad climbing, how to do alpine climbing. Eventually got my certifications to guide it. Um, and when I got to a point in my climbing where I was like, okay, I'm at a point where I can do the things I want to do. I've done the things I wanted to do. What's next? And I've always slacklined in the park, and I had no idea that there was this thing called highlining that existed. And I was in the park slacklining one day, and I came across these people, and they're like, "Have you ever highlined before?" And I was like, "What?" I don't even know that's a thing. I didn't know there was people that did that. And spontaneously, I just went out the next day with them, and they showed me what a highline is. And for those who don't know what a highline is, it's a slack line over a canyon or just a lot of height, and you're tied in your harness, so you're slacklining. If you fall on a rope, which I think I want to emphasize because some people are like, "Oh, are you just out there with no rope?" But that allowed me to continue my climbing skills because there's a lot of anchor building involved. There's a lot of technical systems involved. And I got to just push myself in spots that I was kind of done pushing myself in climbing. And I kind of go back and forth between highlining and climbing. And then I just love a good day at the park or a hike too. It doesn't always need to be crazy stuff in the mountains, but yeah, those are kind of my main things.
Do you think that learning how to slackline and highline made you better at climbing?
Definitely.
In
Yeah.
what
I would
ways?
say like the headspace of it because climbing is scary. And for those who have climbed, like, sometimes you get into super scary situations and you're just kind of freaking out. You're super high up. And when I started highlining, a lot of misconceptions about highlining is it's this really extreme sport that is like super intense, but in reality, it's really meditative.
Hmm.
I call it an active meditation. You just have to just really focus in and be still and be quiet with your mind and learn how to balance like fear and feeling comfortable on the line, especially when you're super high up. And I think navigating those feelings on a high line have translated into climbing. And when I'm in a better headspace climbing, I'm just a better climber. And same goes for highlining. And so highlining helped me train that headspace, which is really cool. And I've never experienced that with any other sport.
Yeah, it probably helps with business too. And actually,
Hmm.
yesterday I was having a conversation with my buddy Seth, and we're doing a 100-mile ultra marathon run in
Yeah.
5.5 weeks. So we were on an 11-mile run yesterday, and after we got back and we like jumped in the lake. That's my rule. If you run more than 9 miles,
Hmm.
you get to jump in the lake. And he asked me, "What do you think has been the thing that you have like learned the most that's helped you in doing this and like in running these longer distances?" And his response was a lot more like the nutrition has helped. Like I think, learning the nutrition has helped me be able to do these runs longer. But my answer was really different. Um, my answer was a lot more about the headspace. Like I
Hmm.
think what I've learned and been able to apply to running in terms of like gratitude and joy and like acceptance and the headspace around that has been much more beneficial than anything else that I've learned. And maybe part of that's because I'm looking at it from a perspective of like how it applies to other areas of my life. But I think
Hmm.
that that was something that I was missing, maybe, was, I push really hard on work, I push really hard in different ways, but like remembering to be grateful in the moment and like joyous in the moment really helps me get through those longer runs. Like I ran 40 miles last Sunday, and
Hmm.
it's really hard to feel sorry for yourself if you can look at it through the lens of like being grateful and joyful. And
Yeah.
That has been the number one thing that has helped me to accomplish those longer runs. And it's interesting, like the reason that I did the ultra in the first place, or like started training for it, and why I do other stuff, is because the more I've gotten older, the more I've seen that all of these different experiences are kind of like they give you different pieces of lessons. And a lot of times it's things that you already know, but you can take it and it gets pushed to the forefront in trying to run 100 miles that you can then take to having to sit down and crank out a spreadsheet for investors for
Yeah.
6 hours. Like if you can run an 11-mile run and push through that, like you can sit at your desk and you can get through this that you don't want to do. So it's interesting. Like, I don't know, it intrigues me, the overlap of different experiences and how it like makes you better in other experiences. And I could totally see how that would work with highlining versus
Yeah, no,
enlightening.
I completely agree. It's all interconnected, and your mindset
Mhm.
in one aspect of your life will translate to another aspect of your life, even if they're completely different things that
Mhm.
you're doing. So
And it
that's cool
seems so
hearing that.
simple. Like it seems
Hmm.
so obvious, but you kind of have to like experience it to like fully grasp it. And I also don't think it's like I don't think we teach kids to approach life in that way enough. Of like, hey, this is
Mm.
an experience, like learn from this, but like how else does it apply to your life? And school is very like rigid and you're not supposed to fail. And like you get punished for failing, but like failing's good. First two marathons that I tried to do when I was training for this ultra, I didn't finish them. I cramped and like I ran out of
Hmm.
water on one. Like it was not fun, but like it was part of the process. So it's interesting, and I think the outdoors does that in so many ways, and it applies back to other areas in life. And I like the term that you used of kind of like active meditation, because that's something that actually running is not very good for me with. Like I'm learning through doing this, like what actually works for me. The problem that I have with running is that I can think while I run.
Hmm.
Like I need to do something more often where I can't think and I'm like really just focused on what I'm doing. I could see how highlining would be very good for that. For me, surfing is good for that, or like water skiing is good, or snow skiing. I'm very like just present. Running doesn't always get that out of me, but I can try and force myself into it and then it makes the run better. So like it's good in that way,
Hmm.
but it's also bad in that way. Whereas like there's other things for me that are easier to just like focus on in on the moment. But that's
Yeah,
kind of
and it's so different person to person too. For some
it.
people, running is their active meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
for others, like me, I can't even run a mile without being like, I'm done. I need to stop. I do not feel a flow state in this whatsoever.
Yeah, the flow state is huge. Like trying to get into that flow state is something that I've become more and more like intrigued with. And it's actually very
Hmm.
funny because you knew me in college and I was like,
Hmm.
the guy with the deer head on the wall that was in Boulder and was very like opposed to a lot of the like super kind of like more hippie liberal stuff. And actually now that I'm out of
Like
it,
yoga.
yeah, like yoga. And now I do yoga. Alex jokes with me about that all the time because she tried to get me to do yoga in all of college, and I was like, I'm not doing yoga. Like I'm not doing it. And now I do yoga, and I actually really enjoy it. But it's been funny because I've actually become more like hippie and looking into like bigger meanings behind things and looking for that since I've gotten out of Boulder than when I was there, which has just been kind of funny. But
That is funny.
um okay, so that was a bit of a tangent, but I'll try and bring it back. Um, so I've always admired how you've been able to take your passions, like for things like the outdoors, and then turn them into businesses. Like you said, you've only really worked for someone else for
Hmm.
a year. What are you currently doing? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my passion for the outdoors has always inspired business ideas, and I've always had a million business ideas, and I never knew what I actually wanted to run with. And I was guiding a trip with my co-guide. Her name is Bridget, and now she's my co-founder. And we were making coffee one morning, and it was a French press, and we were on a big group backpacking trip. I don't know why we were given a French press. Um, and it was just so chaotic. The cleanup was horrible. We had to make multiple different cans of it for the whole group. You know what I'm trying to say. And it was just a chaotic mess. And then there was the opposite end where there was instant coffee. And I'm like, I don't want to drink that. That's gross. I hated the instant coffee. And our other co-guide, her name is Livy, she was steeping tea. And I was like, why isn't there coffee in a steepable bag? That would just be so easy for everyone. We could give out steeped coffee bags to everyone. We wouldn't have to deal with the mess of a French press. We wouldn't have to drink gross instant coffee. Why isn't this a thing in the outdoors? And Bridget and I sat there and we were like, we've just got to do this. Like, this is it. This is our grand idea. And after 9 months, which is in the grand scheme not that long, we established the business, and got Alpenglow coffee up and running, which basically we sell steepable, compostable coffee brew bags. So you just steep it in hot water and you have quality coffee in your mug. And you could do that while you're on an adventure at home. It's just an easy brewing method that's not really popular in the outdoor industry and just in the coffee industry in general. So we're really excited to get it out. We've been launched since December, so a little more than half a year. And it's been really fun.
So why is that? Like, why wasn't this a thing? Or tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's my question too, and I don't know why it wasn't a thing. One thing that is popular is that drip kit. If you've
Hmm.
seen companies like Kuju Coffee, or there's a few others, but you kind of fold open a recyclable pour over kit and you put it over your mug. But there's some issues with drip kit in the fact that it leaves you with a ton of waste, and that's not fun when you're on a backpacking trip. And if you have a small mug, which you normally do when you're backpacking, that pour over, the fold over pour over, usually takes up more than half the cup. And so it's harder to steep something like that. And that's the problem I've run into with that kind of brewing method for camping. Um, and there's people out there doing steepable coffee. It's just not popular yet. So
Yeah.
we are trying to get it out there.
Well, I think you have a cool market to go after because I look at, you know, when I'm elk hunting, um,
Hmm.
people either don't drink coffee or they do the instant coffee all the time. And it's super popular. Like, especially in like big mountain hunters, most big mountain hunters want to have a cup of coffee to start their day. And it is a pain.
Hmm.
So, but everyone has a jet
Yeah.
boil. Like it made total sense when you kind of first told me about it. I was like, wow, that's actually really cool idea. And I think the market that you're going after, and like coming from the guiding industry and like having that piece of it and being able to,
Hmm.
sell that to guides as well, and outfitters is definitely a very solid entry point. And like it's niche enough that you can really enter
Hmm.
well. Um, so tell me about that. Like how are you going about getting this out there?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head with guiding. That is where it all began with our first beginning sales. A guiding company that I've been contracted by was like our first wholesale order. Um, and just having them to get the word out, and then using other guiding companies that I've been contracted by. Hey, I have this coffee company. Would you be interested in having it on your trips? So that was the first point of entry in the outdoor industry. And on my own guiding trips, I give out samples to all my clients. Um, and from there, it's just creating those connections and building community with people I was already connected with and people I'm connecting with, not just through business, but through outdoor guiding trips or just adventuring in general in the outdoor industry. I'm I do a lot of work with random brands in the outdoor industry, whether it's like modeling or writing, just random stuff. And it's always a topic of conversation. Hey, I have this coffee company. You should check it out. So I guess to answer in short, it's just about building community and doing it authentically. And I think that's been really successful for us.
Yeah. So tell me, where you guys at like today? You said you launched in December. What has,
Hmm.
because I kind of asked the why. Like I understand the why, I understand the need. How are you actually making it happen? Like what were the steps that you took to get to here and what's next?
Yeah, I think a big part is learning as we go, especially with the like financials and the sales, because I'm not as strong in that aspect. I think I'm stronger with marketing and creative and um, community building, PR, that type of stuff. So it's just a lot of learning as we go. In that 8, 9 months that we were launching, a lot of Google, a lot of meetings with people, including yourself, on like, how should we do this? How do you think we should go about this? What do you think of this? Um, and it's just been a learning journey. And that's been
Nice.
super rewarding as well because I've learned so much and I've met so many different people who have expertise in areas that I know nothing about. So it's been cool talking to people and just building that community and entrepreneurs as well. We've built community with people in New York, people in LA, people in Austin, Texas, in the Midwest, and just kind of through the power of Zoom calls, learning from one another, which is really cool.
That is honestly my favorite part about starting a business. Like it gets you in
Hmm.
the door with people that you wouldn't otherwise have the chance to talk to. Like just yesterday I was giving a pitch to four guys, and I'm 24 years old and everyone else in the room is probably double my age and much more successful than I am. But, because of what we do, like I get to be there and they're listening to me share my idea and deciding whether or not they want to be a part of it. And it's cool. You get to learn from them. And even just by hearing their questions that they ask, like you learn what you're missing and what you need to articulate better the next time, and kind of where your gaps are and where your holes are. Like I always kind of joke and say, if you want to get a master's degree on starting a business, go try and raise money. And the people who are smart and
Hmm.
know how to run a business will tear you apart. But what they tear you apart with is what you need to fix. And then you fix it and then you hopefully come
Totally.
back. So it's really cool to
Hmm.
be able to get out there and be able to meet people you wouldn't have otherwise been able to meet. The other piece that I really like about starting a business is you get to surround yourself with the people that you want to surround yourself with. Like my team is a
Hmm.
bunch of savages. Like I love my team because I got to pick them. And, they're the guys that, my buddy Seth that I said I went for that run with. I love working with Seth because I know that if I ask him, hey, you want to go for a run? He might be like, oh, but he's always going to say yes. Because
Hmm.
what else are we going to do? We're going to sit and watch Netflix? Like, no, we're going to finish up a day of work and then we're going to go get after it. And like yesterday, we planned on running a 4 mile run. We ran 11. Like, those are the kind of people that I like surrounding myself with. Starting a business allows me to do that. And that's one of the biggest benefits, in addition to getting to meet really cool people. Um, so, what is your team like now? Like, how
Yeah.
big is your team? What are your plans kind of in the next, 6, 9, 12 months?
We are small but mighty. So it's me, my co-founder Bridget, and then we have our social media intern, and she is awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what are kind of the next steps for you guys? What do you need to
So
get
our
better at?
next
What are you looking to
steps
do?
are pitching. We have a few pitch competitions lined up, and just like you were talking about earlier, it's going to be a learning experience. I have very little experience pitching. So I'm excited for it, but that's kind of our summer plans are pitch fests, pitch competitions, and going to some summer festivals as a pop-up.
Nice. So
Yeah.
why are you're raising? Why are you raising? Is it to expand your inventory, like get the word out there,
hmm
grow your team? Like what's kind of the goal behind that?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is expanding inventory, and also just creating a more sustainable business model, which happens to be a lot more expensive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that is our main goal right now is to have a more sustainable business model with just our coffee trading, our manufacturing, and we want to do it right and do it intentionally, and we need a lot of money to do so. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of our next goal is to just create more relationships with the farms and go down there and create yeah, a more sustainable business model.
Cool. Well, you guys did it the right way. And, we talked early on in your journey with it. I was like, just get
hmm
an MVP and get it out there and
hmm
prove that it's a need, and then you can go raise money. Like, raising
Totally.
money is actually not as hard as people think, as long as you have proof that there's a need for your
hmm
product and that you can actually like make it happen. But the biggest thing is a need, like showing that people are actually willing to buy your product or are interested in it. And if you can make the financials make sense, like you can raise money. It's not
Totally.
as hard as people think. So I'm excited to
Yeah.
see what
We
you
took your
guys are.
advice.
I'm glad that it wasn't terrible advice and that you're now at the point where you can raise because
Yeah.
it's hard to get to that point. Like raising money, people always think is hard, but it really is getting to the point where you can raise money that
hmm
is even trickier because you just don't know. And that's why you don't want to like raise before you are able to get to the point where you guys are at now. Um, that's cool. So like next is
Yeah.
kind of once you get the money, you get the inventory, and then you look to expand kind of the sales, the marketing. Are you guys going to go a lot of
Yeah.
B2C or B2B or what's kind of your plan there?
Yeah, we're kind of hoping to do more B2C with bigger retailers and also B2B with wholesale. I think a lot
Mm,
of the money in the coffee industry is B2B, but we think it would be cool to also focus in on those heavy hitter retailers when we do
mhm.
get the funding to do so. Um, but I think it starts with creating our main lens of inventory because right now we only have one and we
Mhm.
want to expand that before we even consider B2B and B2C.
How many are you going to do?
We're going to do 5,
Okay,
hopefully,
cool.
roasts of coffee. Yeah.
Are you still going to keep trying to sell to like outfitters?
Yeah.
I personally love that play as like an
hmm
early B2B. And the
Yeah.
other reason I love it is because I was having this conversation with a gear company actually the other day. If like one of the biggest hurdles that you have when you're trying to like market a business is you're always trying to establish trust. Like that's one of the
hmm
first things that you have to do. For guides, guides innately have this element of trust and like expertise. So someone who's booking a guided trip, they booked a trip with them because they trust them. They're going to trust their gear recommendations. They're going to trust the things that they, offer. They're going to trust the things that they recommend. You already have that trust built in. So if you're able to enter the market and get your guides like loving it and showing it to others and like getting that in front of their clients, you're going to be able to create this web and it's going to be built off of the people that your customers already trust. So like I think that that's an awesome play to go after to start even before like probably the B2B, like big picture wholesale, because like big picture wholesale is going to be awesome for spreading it larger, but if you can do it after you've already established that like kind of trust and got like the web trickled out, I think that's going to be
hmm
really really cool and also like
Yeah.
I have no idea. That's just my take on it of where I see it. It just makes a lot of sense to me. And I've seen that that's one of the harder things to establish with a new
Hmm.
business is that trust factor. So like I think you have such a good play there that it's really cool. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, thanks. I agree. And I think that's also been the most successful thing so far are working with outfitters. So we're excited to expand that and talk to more outfitters about getting our product in there with guides.
Yeah. What about sales? What's your plan to do that? Are you gonna figure out how to grow a sales team? Are you gonna be hopping on the cold call train? What's your
Ideally, we'll grow a sales team. That is the number one goal, but I think it's just the funding. Um,
nice?
but in a perfect world, I would have a five-person sales team just going after it, but got to start somewhere. So,
That's awesome. What I'm curious on this one. Because I've seen this from like when it was just an idea. What are the things that you've like learned if you were to tell yourself at that idea stage, what would be your advice you would give yourself now on how to start this business in the outdoors?
yeah, I think the number one thing that comes to mind is don't be afraid to talk to people. I think in the beginning, it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm a woman. I'm a woman of color. Like, I can't do this. I can't talk to this person. They won't take me seriously. But if we were talking about building trust. If you build trust with people and just get out of your comfort zone to talk to people who are more knowledgeable, that was the biggest advice I would give myself, and I'm going to keep giving myself throughout this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, you just learn things, and you can take things that you're learning into your own hands or outsource. And yeah, I think that would be it.
One of the things that I remember telling you when you kind of pitched me the idea the first time was break it down into like digestible bites.
Hmm.
Like what were those kind of steps that you took if you had to
Yeah,
break it out into like kind of your playbook of what the
totally.
steps you took to actually start it? What would those be?
So we kind of always break our business down into different categories like finance, marketing, sales, um, and we probably have 10 branches of categories, and I could go through them, but we took those steps, like you were saying, really slowly. And first was establishing the business and all the legal behind that. So, LLC, trademarks, looking into patents, things like that. Um, and that was all learning along the way. And then marketing and brand identity. How are we going to present ourselves to the world? Who do we want to be known for? What's our brand voice? Um, and just overall brand identity, color schemes, web design, all of that aspect. Okay, we have our brand. Now, how are we going to reach people and what does that look like? So, marketing, sales, everything we were just talking about with B2B, B2C. Um, and that's kind of been our main breakdown is just taking things in little parts and focusing on those parts. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed when you're thinking about everything at once. So, just breaking it down, really focusing in on that for a week or 2 weeks, and then moving on to the next category.
How did you get to the point where you actually have a product to sell people? Because I think that's something that a lot of times is like one of the more difficult things or like one of the most overwhelming things is like I have no idea how to build a
Hmm.
product. For me it was software. It was like, okay, I have an idea for software. I have no idea how to write code. Like for you,
Yeah.
you haven't been in manufacturing. How did you actually get to the point where you have a product?
Hmm. Yeah. So when I was younger, I worked at coffee shops and I always had a love for coffee and where coffee came from. When I travel, I visit coffee farms, and I had a small background in the coffee trade area, and it's something I'm still looking into and want to become more sustainable and ethical with, which is also money. But I was able to get in contact with coffee farms that I could talk to and figure out, okay, where are we sourcing from? And then we knew we didn't want to manufacture outside of the United States. So I looked inside the United States, who can manufacture these compostable bags for us? And we found someone in California to do that for us. So it was just a lot of talking to people and getting them in connection with the next steps. So we had our coffee, we got them in contact with California manufacturing, sends it over to California, they manufacture our compostable steeping bags, and then they send that to us and we have a product. So,
Nice. That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, you broke it down into steps, right? It's just like one thing at a time of, okay, I first you figure out what's going to go in the bags. Okay, let's check that box off. Okay, now I need to figure out how I'm going to actually make the bags. So check that box off. And
Hmm.
that's for me, the way I did it was I have no idea how to build software. Let's find a co-founder. And
Yeah.
then once I was able to find that, and then we got introductions to the people who could actually make it happen. And I was lucky enough to pitch a gentleman who has a software company that he was willing
Hmm.
to build the MVP of it. So it was like I still have never written a line of code. I learned how to prototype. That was
Yeah.
another piece of it. It was like, okay, let's learn how to prototype so I can show them what to actually build. But you just kind of break it down into like what's right in front of you, and then you can actually get to the point where someday you have a product. And it's cool to see
Yeah.
where
And
you
I'm
guys are
making
at.
it
And now
sound a
you're actually
lot
making
easier than it was.
money. Yeah,
Totally.
that's
I'm
true.
making it sound a lot easier than it was. Like, there was a lot of talking to a lot of different people and a lot of different steps. And Google and YouTube videos were a big proponent in, okay, what should I do to make this happen? And that helped me so
Mhm.
much. But it was a process getting the product.
This is kind of I like this transition. I think that because of how difficult starting a company is, that a lot of times in order for you to, work through all those steps and to keep going when it is really hard, like you said, you have to have a mission that's kind of bigger than yourself and bigger than making money and bigger than, just your product. And I found that, because I feel like I kind of have that mission for GoGuide, but I also have that mission for myself of what I want to do after GoGuide. It makes it easier for me to work through the really, really hard times of running a business. And even if you look at like, this is an interesting parallel. If you look at podcasts, someone was asking me the other day about
Hmm.
starting a podcast and they were worried about it not being perfect. And I said, I heard a quote that it was like, um, 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3 or 5 or whatever that number was, but it was like super small. And I told him, I was like, so basically, you don't have to be perfect because if you just make more than 3 episodes, you're already in the top 10% of podcasts that have ever existed. And I think that that's very true with businesses as well. Like it's going to be hard, but if you can just keep making that little bit of extra progress and not give up, you're going to you're going to have a good shot at being able to make it happen. With that all being said, what would you describe the mission that you're on?
Yeah, I would say the mission that we are on is to create sustainable and accessible single serve coffee. And currently in the coffee market, there's not a lot of sustainable options for single serve. And if it's not single serve, it's not very accessible to take it out into the backcountry or on a camping
Mhm.
trip. So we're really excited to just dive into that and start visiting farms and go and create custom roasts with quality coffee and kind of take over this single serve coffee market that's currently dominated by K cups, honestly. Um,
Mhm.
and if we want to get into like the statistics of everything, there's enough K cups in landfills to circle the world 7 times. Like, there's so much plastic in the single serve coffee industry. And so we're just trying to change that.
That's really interesting. I would have never thought about that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's wild. You
Hmm.
alluded to this earlier, um, but I'm curious your experience in the outdoor industry being a guide and then in entrepreneurship as a female of color. What has that
Hmm.
been like for you? Um, and what's your recommendation to other either women or people of color who want to be in those industries?
Yeah, I mean, being the minority in any situation, whether it's business, in the outdoors, in school, growing up, um, you feel different and people look at you differently and people have assumptions of what you're capable of. People have assumptions on things you know and your expertise in different areas and topics. And I've always had this mindset of prove them wrong. Like no one has to have an assumption and you can prove these people wrong and that women and women of color all over the world are way more capable than people look at them to be. And that goes for anything that you're doing. And so when I was getting really into the outdoors and people have assumptions of my rope skills and like what knots I know, for example, I'm like, I actually know these knots and more. Let me teach you. And then you just see a spark in people's eyes like, "Oh, I I just realized like I made an assumption." You don't have to blatantly tell someone that, but just proving people wrong is the ultimate form of like justice in my own personal life. Um, and so when it comes to business, it's really cool women and women of color reaching out to me being like, wow, that's really cool. You started a business. Like, I think I can do that too. And also, creating community with people who look like you is really powerful. And it's something I've put at the forefront with all my endeavors. So, in the outdoor spaces, I do majority of my guiding work with women and with women of color and with businesses, supporting other women-owned small businesses and POC-owned businesses, and just supporting each other and creating a network in our own communities is really powerful too.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I've seen just from kind of being in the guiding space, obviously it's definitely male dominated, but there
Hmm.
are a lot of women in it that make a really good niche for themselves. And like with our system, we kind of were the first to do the book by guide piece. And one of our biggest selling points actually to companies who have women as guides is that a lot of times the women who are booking those trips will want to book a woman. And
Hmm.
it definitely is an opportunity. And I think it's a growing one. I think there's a lot more women who are looking to get into that industry within guiding and within the outdoors. And a lot of people who are really interested in starting. Is that something that you've
Hmm.
seen or experienced?
Yeah, totally. I think a big thing is if you see it, you feel like you can be it. And for the longest time, you don't see women in these leadership roles. You don't see women guiding. And so the more women that are going into guiding, other women are being like, oh, I can do that too. And it's just this little feeling of inspiration to go and do those things. And so it's a ripple effect. The more people that are getting into it, the more people are feeling inspired to do that, um, which is super cool. And there are a lot of women who just want women guides because there's a feeling of being outside with an all female group or all POC group. And it's different. Like affinity spaces are super important when originally the space is dominated by um, white men, honestly. So
Mhm.
it's cool, like seeing these spaces grow and being a part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any advantages that come out of it? Like I know that I'm a really big believer in a lot of times like you take things that people might think of as liabilities and you turn them into your assets. Like what have you
Hmm.
seen in that with your business and within the outdoors?
I would say the biggest thing is the community that I've built with other small female business owners and POC business owners. And we've created this entrepreneurial network with each other where we always have each other's backs. And I know in business it can be really cutthroat and people just want to be at the top. And being in a space in a network where it's actually very supportive and everyone isn't as competitive and wanting to be on the top is a really cool thing to be a part of, and I really love that. And I've gotten so many resources from this community of people that I would never get if I never was a part of it, and I'm
Mhm.
really thankful for that.
I think that's one of the biggest things that we need today is community.
Hmm.
Like it's been something that has dropped a lot, and COVID made that worse. That
Hmm.
process had already started with all the things that were going on, and loneliness is an epidemic in this country,
Hmm.
and being able to surround yourself with that community, like I said, that's why I love my team, because I get to talk to them every day, and I like the people that I'm around. But you need to have that. You need to have that support group. It's even something that I look at in kind of our generation. Like we should have more support groups and like think tanks and mastermind groups. Like my grandpa actually, he still meets with his men's group of dentists that he met with from 50 years ago, because that's what you did. You used to get together and have your group that you would meet with once a month and talk about the things that are going on and help each other and bounce ideas off each other, and we don't do that enough anymore. And
Hmm.
it's something that I've talked about with my partners as well, as like we need to have a group. And for me, you know obviously, very different situation than when you're at, but when you're I was 21 when I started this business.
Hmm.
That was my own kind of minority of people. Like I didn't have a lot of friends that could relate to what I was doing. And it was difficult because I would almost find myself like lying about the problems that I was dealing with, because you'd
Hmm.
ask someone, "Oh, what are you up to these days?" And I have a lot of my friends are like, "Oh, well, I work and then I drink and then I repeat the process. Like I work and then I drink on the weekends." And I'm like, "What's new?" Like, hmm, you know, nothing. And I wanted, then they asked me, and I'm like, "Well, I'm struggling to raise $1 million right now, and like I've got a lot of pressure to get this done. Otherwise, like, my team's relying on it, and I have these expectations I have to meet for investors, and I don't know why this isn't working or why this isn't working." But you end up not saying that because you don't want to, come across, I don't know. I don't even know what I want not come across as, but there's still real problems. It's just
Hmm.
different problems. And if you can create that support group around you that can help you and like understands what you're going through, it makes it a lot easier, especially with entrepreneurs. Like you really need that support group of it, because not a lot of people, especially young entrepreneurs, know the struggles that come with it and the pressure that comes with it and the anxiety that comes with it. Um,
Hmm.
but if you have a big enough mission, you can push through it. But it helps to surround yourself with the right people. And I even, like want to have book clubs and stuff to be able to make that
Yeah.
happen. And I value that type of thing a lot more than I used to. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to start doing this podcast as well, was just because it makes my day better. Like I get to talk to really cool people about things that I like to talk about, and I learn little bits and pieces here, and hopefully it, you know, helps other people in some way. And maybe it helps some of our clients to be able to learn some things that they could implement into their business. If there's other people who are wanting to start a business in the outdoors, like seeing that it's possible. And for me, it's just fun. Like I don't actually look and see if we get like how many views and stuff we get on. I don't even have Instagram on my phone. My team takes care of getting it posted, and I just like doing it. And it seems like people like it, but for me, it's just fun. And, it helps get the word out a little bit about what we're doing and hear about what other people are doing. And even with our clients and stuff, for Phil, he does a lot of the podcasts with some of our guides and outfitters, and it allows us to build genuine relationships with them. Like, that's what you're really building when you're building a business, is relationships with customers. And yes, hopefully you have a good
Hmm.
product that they like, but the relationship is way harder than getting them to use a product. And if you can build a genuine relationship with customers, then that's that's the biggest hurdle. And it's exciting when you're able to make that happen. It's rewarding when you hear people, talk about a lot of our testimonials. People are like, yeah, we love the product, but really it's all this other stuff. Like, it's the fact that we text them and then we say we want this feature, and they try and build it, and if they can't build it, they let us know and say why. And all of those genuine relationships that you can build and the people you can have around you to support you, it makes doing this a lot easier when you're trying to start a business. So it's
Hmm.
cool to hear your journey. And that's why I told you I enjoy watching everything that you're doing, and it inspires me to see what you've been able to do. And I'm excited to see kind of where you go next with it.
Yeah, you too. I think you're talking about just young entrepreneurs and the challenges that come with being young in this space, having people like you and other young people to talk to support one another. Because honestly, we're all learning as we go, and it's cool to build those relationships with each other, with our customers, with people using our product, clients, and yeah, you're so right. It's just relationship building and trust building and creating community.
Hmm. And it's also something that I think you can overinflate in your head, of
Mhm.
like, that you might not be capable of it. Because one thing I've learned from, pitching people who've been really successful is they still don't really know what they're doing. Like,
No
they're
one
all just
does.
trying to figure it out, and they're good problem solvers, and that's what's allowed them to be successful. And they surround themselves with really good people. But they actually look at some people, some investors look at my age and they see it as an advantage versus a liability, because they're like, oh, he's got tons of time and nothing to lose. Like, that's
Hmm.
it's actually an attractive thing. So for people who are younger looking to start something in the outdoors, turn that liability into an asset. And at the very least, you're going to get a hell of a story to be able
Yeah.
to learn from and go do something else.
Yeah.
And like, I know for me, GoGuide is part one. Like,
I am the same way. And
mhm,
it's so cool knowing that it's just the beginning. If we sell our companies one day or it fails, like whatever happens, our risk is lower because we're younger and we have this time to learn, and we can take what we learn from this business and apply it
mhm.
into the same business in the future or another business.
Yeah. What do you think has been the biggest thing that you've learned throughout the process of trying to start your coffee company?
I think it's exactly what we were talking about is I don't have it figured out, so I need to problem solve.
Yeah.
And I've grown so much in my problem solving skills.
Hmm. Yep. That's cool. Um, all right. Well, I have a kind of closing tradition that I've been doing lately. And my question for you is, what is the most memorable experience that you've had in the outdoors? And what is your bucket list trip that you would like to
My
do?
most memorable experience in the outdoors would have to be this is the hardest question ever because I just
You've
have
done a lot.
so many cool I have so many cool experiences, but I will say it was when I climbed the Grand Teton, and we climbed it very, very, very quickly and got up at 9 a.m. and we just watched the sunrise from the summit of the Grand Teton. And it was so cool. No one else was there. Usually, the Grand is a very crowded mountain. So just being up there all by ourselves was absolutely incredible and honestly inspired this feeling and sensation of the word Alpenglow, which is the name of our coffee company. Just seeing that sunrise over the mountains is an indescribable feeling. And I would say a goal I have for the outdoors.
Bucket list. What's the bucket list trip or thing that you have that you want to do in the outdoors?
Bucket list trip is to make it down to Tasmania. um, it's in Australia and do some highlining. It's just world renowned highlining, and I'd love to go down there and do that. You have to like climb up to even set up the highline. And I don't know when I'll do that or if I'll ever do that, but I dream about it and hopefully it happens one day.
You have to have something to shoot for.
Yeah, total bucket list, number one.
Very cool. Well, Cheyenne, thank you so much for doing this. This was a pleasure. I enjoyed it a ton to be able to kind of hear everything that you're up to and also just like check in because you know, I saw this when it was kind of an idea and now being able
Mhm.
to see it where it is today, it's very fun to see the growth that you've been able to make with it. So good work.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was so fun.